This is the second video in the Stuckberries series, and in this video this is Stuckberries taking a deeper dive, because it's one thing to sort of talk about how Stuckberries came about, but of course that's a very simple fundamental basis on which we can start looking very deeply into ourselves. Now, for a start, each Stuckberry is a trauma. And it can be a big trauma or it can be a little trauma, depending. And sometimes the trauma is so small that you can resolve it really easily or it's not a problem. Sometimes things happen and you're not even aware of the trauma. Or sometimes it can be so gigantic and monstrous that the trauma becomes a post-traumatic stress trauma. This is a trauma which is stopping you moving ahead in your life. Not all the traumas have to do that. But there's a couple of rules to sort of look at here. The earlier something happens to you, the more significant it can be. Now, I remember seeing a person having an amniocentesis. The woman was pregnant. They put a needle in the womb and they take a sample of the amniotic fluid and they take it away and test it for things like Down syndrome and spina bifida and things like that. In this particular case, they were using an ultrasound so you could see where the baby in the womb was. And as soon as the needle came in there, the baby was out of there. You could see it skittling as far away as the umbilical cord would allow it to go. And this is a baby which was less than 9 weeks old. It's quite possible that such traumas like that become the source of difficulty in life. It could become the start of an ongoing anxiety disorder or a disorder about depression or something like that. We never really know. Consciously we don't know anyway, but we'll start to see that more as we go on, how we can actually recognise which traumas we need to deal with and how we actually deal with them. But for now, let's just look at it and say that traumas are potentially significant. In a lot of ways, we all have traumas, we all have traumatic experiences in our lives which we have to deal with. We either deal with them at the time or we pack them away and they become a Stuckberry. And when they become a Stuckberry, they sit there and they wait around for something to come along and trigger. It might be, let's take the instance that somebody sees a red car, and as they see this red car, their mother is about to leave and she goes away and never comes back again. And so this 1, 2, 3-year-old child associates a red car with the mother leaving. And as a result, for the rest of their life until they resolve it, whenever they see a red car, they become slightly traumatized. And of course, as they go through life, they're trained not to be ridiculous. And so they don't be ridiculous, so they learn how to hide their feelings, but yet the whole time, red cars keep on triggering a trauma within them, and it keeps on getting worse, and it keeps on building and building and building because it's not being resolved until you've got a complex of emotions around being abandoned and a red car comes along to trigger it. Things like that happen. Or let's say you've been physically abused. And every time you were physically abused, the person who physically abused you started yelling. And so as you get older, you get really sensitive to yelling. And if anybody yells, you just can't stand it. And you get hypersensitive to it and have to go into a shock and really close yourself down as soon as somebody yells. Things like that. Or you may have been told that you weren't very good at what you're doing. So as soon as you get challenged to do something, you close down and think, well, I've been told I'm not very good at what I'm doing. I don't want to go through that pain again, so I'm not even going to try. These are the sort of the ways the trauma work in our life. Let's just say that you might have been sexually abused. A lot of people have been. And so later on in life, when you're at an age to have a healthy sex life, you find difficulties doing that because of the post-traumatic stress disorder around sexuality, around your sexuality. And I guess I look at life as being, as we go through life, to be able to recognise and deal with those traumas when they come up. When they are blocking us, when they are stopping us going forward, we need to recognise what it is and go in there and deal with them. Let's say you're being adopted, and as an adoptee, your mother goes into, let's say she goes somewhere, and the moment you're born, you're taken away from your mother. That becomes quite traumatic. It becomes a real trauma. And let's say you never see your mother again after being 9 months snuggled in her womb and all nice and safe. You're now out in the world and your mother's gone for the first time in your life, never to be seen again. And then let's say another mother comes along, and an adoptive mother comes along, you become adopted. But that trauma is still there. There's still a post-traumatic stress disorder around the trauma of being taken away from your mother at adoption. A really good example of this is the stolen children generation from the Indigenous people. They were taken away, and it was a trauma. They were traumatically taken away, and those traumas never really healed because the bond between the blood bond is so strong. So you take a child away from its birth mother, from its biological mother. That's not a bond you can break that easily. In fact, I don't think it's breakable. I think it's almost unbreakable. And these are the sort of things that we're looking at. As we go through life, we've all got some sort of trauma to have to deal with. Past trauma, because none of us had a perfect life. And everybody had had one or more traumatic experiences through their life. It doesn't have to be when you're younger either, because people who go to war come back with post-traumatic stress disorder because they see things, they do things, they've had things happen to them which they haven't been able to really emotionally cope with. The point is that in the world of trauma and unresolved stuck berries and post-traumatic stress disorder, you start to think you need to live in accordance with avoiding such traumas again. So as soon as something comes along to trigger it, you can have an over-the-top reaction, a reaction such that you really can't get on with the life because everything goes into avoiding that trauma. Nothing is going into sort of taking you forward. This is a deeper dive into stuck berries. This is why stuck berries need to be resolved, and we need to have the strategies to resolve them. And that's what we're looking at in the next videos. Thank you for watching.